when a stumbling, desperate father collapsed into booth number 4. He thought he was at the mercy of a timid, minimum-wage waitress. He had no idea the woman pouring his black coffee was actually worth $4 billion, and the very CEO whose empire had secretly destroyed his life. The neon sign of the Starlight Diner in Pioneer Square buzzed with a relentless, flickering hum, casting harsh pink shadows onto the rain-slicked Seattle pavement. It was 2:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of graveyard shift that attracted only the city's ghosts. Behind the laminate counter, Vivian Kensington scrubbed a stubborn coffee stain with a ragged rag, her shoulders slumped beneath a cheap polyester uniform. Her name tag read Vivi, pinned slightly crookedly. To the sleepy line cook and the trucker nodding off in the corner, Vivi was just a shy, mousy waitress, struggling to make ends meet. They didn't know that the Starlight Diner was merely an asset on a spreadsheet, recently acquired by Kensington Global. They certainly didn't know that Vivian, the sole heiress and cutthroat CEO of the conglomerate, was currently undercover, investigating why her newly acquired hospitality division was hemorrhaging cash. She had spent the last 3 weeks blending into the background, observing the mismanagement firsthand. The diner bell chimed, jarring her from her thoughts. A man stumbled through the glass doors, bringing a gust of freezing October rain with him. He was a towering figure, but he carried himself like a collapsing building. His trench coat was soaked, and underneath it, the remnants of extreme wealth clung to him like a cruel joke, a bespoke charcoal suit tailored to perfection, but now wrinkled and stained, and a scuffed Patek Philippe watch gripping his wrist. He didn't walk. He navigated the diner by sheer force of will, finally collapsing into booth number 4. He buried his face in his hands, letting out a ragged, agonizing breath. Vivian picked up a menu and a coffee pot, her sharp eyes assessing him. She recognized the scent of expensive bourbon mixed with the distinct, metallic tang of absolute despair. She approached the table quietly, her posture intentionally meek. "Coffee, sir?" she asked, her voice soft and unassuming. The man looked up, and Vivian felt a strange jolt in her chest. His eyes were bloodshot, surrounded by dark, bruised bags of exhaustion. But they were a piercing, intelligent blue. He looked to be in his late 30s, possessing a ruggedly handsome face that had been hollowed out by recent trauma. "Just leave the pot," he rasped, his voice thick with alcohol and unshed tears. "And a glass of water. Please." "Rough night?" Vivian murmured, pouring the steaming black liquid into a thick ceramic mug. The man let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Rough year. Rough life." He ran a shaking hand through his damp, dark hair. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be here. I couldn't let my daughter see me like this." Vivian paused, the coffee pot hovering. "Your daughter?" "Madeline," he whispered, staring into the black abyss of his mug, as if it held the answers to the universe. "She's 7. She's asleep at my neighbor's apartment. I'm supposed to be picking her up, but I can't walk in there smelling like a distillery and failure. I used to give her the world. Now I can't even give her a permanent roof." Vivian slipped into the opposite side of the booth. It broke every rule of diner etiquette, but her instincts, the same predatory instincts that made her a billionaire by 30, told her there was a massive story sitting across from her. "I'm Vivi," she said softly. "What happened to you?" He looked at her, truly looking at her for the first time. Perhaps it was the anonymity of the 2 a.m. hour, or the gentle, non-judgmental way she held herself. But the dam broke. "My name is Nathaniel," he said, his voice cracking. "Nathaniel Reed. A year ago, I was worth $2 billion, I built Reed Innovations from the ground up. Clean energy infrastructure. We were changing the world. Vivian's breath hitched in her throat. Her blood ran cold. Nathaniel Reed. She knew that name. Every titan in the corporate world knew that name. And then? Vivian prompted, forcing her voice to remain steady. And then the wolves came, Nathaniel spat, his fist clenching around the mug. A conglomerate called Kensington Global. They wanted my patents. When I refused to sell, they didn't just walk away. They launched a hostile takeover. They planted false embezzlement rumors, tanked my stock, paid off my board of directors, and buried me in litigation until I was bankrupt. They took my company, my life's work, and my fortune. The stress tore my marriage apart. My wife left, and now it's just me and Madeline. Vivian sat frozen, the cheap polyester of her uniform suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. Kensington Global. Her company. A year ago, Vivian had been hospitalized for 3 months following a severe car accident. During her absence, her ruthless executive vice president, Harrison Cole, had taken the reins. She knew Harrison had aggressively expanded their tech portfolio, but she had never looked at the collateral damage. She had signed off on the acquisitions blindly upon her return, trusting her executive team. She had signed the papers that ruined the man sitting in front of her. I'm so sorry, Vivian whispered, genuine horror creeping into her tone. It's not your fault, Vivi, Nathaniel sighed, leaning his head back against the vinyl booth. It's just how the world works. The big fish eat the small fish. But Madeline, she has severe asthma. Her treatments are expensive. We got an eviction notice today. I went to a bar to drink until I couldn't think, because tomorrow I have to look my little girl in the eyes and tell her we're moving into a motel. He reached into the inner pocket of his coat and pulled out a thick leather folio, dropping it onto the table. I spent the last 6 months designing a new hyper-efficient residential solar grid. It's better than anything Reed Innovations ever did. But no bank will touch me. Kensington blacklisted my name in the industry. I'm a pariah. Nathaniel suddenly stood up, swaying slightly. He reached for his wallet, pulling out a crumpled $20 bill. Keep the change. I need to go walk off this bourbon before I get my daughter. Wait, Vivian said, reaching out. You forgot your portfolio. Throw it in the trash, Nathaniel said bitterly, pushing his way back out into the freezing rain. That's where dreams belong anyway. Vivian sat alone in the booth for a long time. She looked down at the $20 bill, then at the thick leather folio. The bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of a new customer. But the billionaire CEO was entirely consumed by the ghost of the empire she had blindly crushed. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the Seattle skyline sparkling in the pale autumn sunlight. High above the city, in the penthouse of the Kensington Tower, the shy, mousy waitress named Vivi was gone. Vivian Kensington stood by her floor-to-ceiling windows, wearing a crisp white Tom Ford suit, a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea in her hand. Her sleek, dark hair was pulled into a severe chignon, and her sharp, assessing eyes stared out at the sprawling metropolis. But her mind was miles away, tethered to a dirty vinyl booth at the Starlight Diner. On her massive mahogany desk lay Nathaniel Reed's leather folio. She had spent the entire night reading through his schematics. Nathaniel wasn't just a businessman, he was a visionary. His new solar grid design was brilliant, flawless, scalable, and completely revolutionary. It was worth billions, and he was ready to throw it in a diner trash can, because her company had destroyed his will to fight. "Enter," Vivian called out, hearing a sharp knock at her office door. Harrison Cole, her executive vice president, strode into the room. He was a shark of a man, impeccably groomed, with a smile that never quite reached his cold, calculating eyes. "Good morning, Vivian," Harrison said smoothly. "I have the quarterly reports for the hospitality acquisitions. I must say, your little undercover stunt at the Starlight is entirely unnecessary. We should just liquidate the diner and sell the real estate." Vivian turned slowly, her eyes locking onto Harrison. "Harrison, tell me about Reed Innovations." Harrison's confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Reed? That was old business, Vivian, from when you were recovering. We absorbed their patents and integrated them into our energy division. It was a massive win for the shareholders." "And Nathaniel Reed?" Vivian asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "What happened to him?" Harrison waved a dismissive hand. "Collateral damage. The man was stubborn. He wouldn't sell, so we had to apply pressure. I heard he went bankrupt. Standard corporate warfare, Vivian. Nothing you haven't done yourself." "Did you fabricate embezzlement charges to trigger the board's vote of no confidence?" she demanded, stepping away from the window. Harrison stiffened. "I protected our interests. The acquisition was highly profitable. You signed off on it." "I signed off on the financials, Harrison, not on the destruction of an innocent man's life through fraudulent means," Vivian snapped, her tone dripping with ice. "Get out of my office and leave the hospitality division to me." As Harrison quickly exited, Vivian walked over to her desk and opened her laptop. The guilt in her chest was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. She was a ruthless businesswoman, yes, but she operated on fairness, on the art of the deal. She did not ruin lives with lies. She owed Nathaniel Reed a debt she couldn't possibly repay with a simple apology. If she revealed her true identity, he would spit in her face, and rightfully so. He would never accept her help. So Vivian did what she did best. She orchestrated a master plan from the shadows. A week later, at exactly 2 a.m., Vivian was back behind the counter of the Starlight Diner. The scratchy uniform was back on, the crooked name tag pinned in place. She wiped the counter methodically, her eyes glued to the glass door. At 2:15 a.m., the bell chimed. Nathaniel Reed walked in. He looked remarkably different. He was completely sober, clean-shaven, and wearing a modest but clean sweater. He still looked exhausted, but the smell of bourbon was gone, replaced by the crisp scent of cheap soap and determination. He walked straight up to the counter, looking incredibly embarrassed. "Vivi," he said, offering a tight, sheepish smile. "I don't know if you remember me." "I remember you, Nathaniel," Vivian said softly, pulling a fresh mug and pouring coffee. "How is Madeline?" His face softened instantly at the mention of his daughter. "She's holding on. We moved into a studio apartment out in Renton. It's tight, but it's safe. Look, I came back because I wanted to apologize. I was out of line last week. I was drunk, and I dumped my life story on you. That wasn't fair." "It's okay," Vivian said, sliding the coffee toward him. "Everyone needs to vent." Nathaniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I also wanted to ask, by any miracle, did you keep that leather folio I left on the table? I know I told you to trash it, but I think I need to try one more time. For Madeline." Vivian reached beneath the counter. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a rare sensation for the untouchable CEO. She pulled out the thick leather folio and placed it on the counter. "I kept it," she said simply. Nathaniel let out a massive breath of relief, resting his hand on the leather cover. "Vivi, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. I owe you." "Actually," Vivian said, lowering her voice and leaning over the counter, playing the role of the timid waitress to perfection. "Something strange happened after you left. A regular customer came in, an older gentleman. He's some kind of private investor, I think. He saw the folder behind the counter and asked what it was. I hope you don't mind, but I let him look at it. Nathaniel frowned, his protective instincts flaring. You let a stranger look at my proprietary designs? He didn't steal them, Vivian said quickly, pulling a pristine, heavy-stock business card from her apron pocket and sliding it across the counter. He left this for you. He told me to tell you that if the genius who drew those schematics ever sobered up, he wanted a meeting. Nathaniel picked up the card. It was minimalist, embossed with gold lettering, Apex Vanguard Ventures, Alexander Thorne, managing partner. It was a shell company, one of Vivian's many private equity funds, completely disconnected on paper from Kensington Global. Nathaniel stared at the card, his hands trembling slightly. Apex Vanguard, I've heard of them. They're a massive private equity firm based in New York. Why would a managing partner be in a dingy diner at 3 a.m.? He has insomnia, Vivian lied flawlessly, wiping down the counter to avoid his piercing blue gaze. He comes in for pie. He said your grid design is the most innovative thing he's seen in a decade. He wants to fund it, fully. Nathaniel looked from the card to the shy waitress in front of him. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. After a year of closed doors, sabotage, and crippling defeat, a sliver of light had just pierced through the darkness. Vivi, Nathaniel choked out, his eyes filling with tears he frantically tried to blink away. If this is real, you just saved my life. You just saved my daughter's life. Just make the call, Nathaniel, Vivian whispered, feeling a sudden, intense warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with corporate profits. Go get your life back. As Nathaniel rushed out of the diner, clutching the folio and the business card like they were made of solid gold, Vivian stood alone in the quiet diner. She had taken the first step in righting a terrible wrong. But she knew this was only the beginning. She was going to resurrect Nathaniel Reed into the billionaire titan he was meant to be, and she was going to use her own fortune to do it, all while keeping him completely unaware that the shy waitress pouring his coffee was the very monster who had pushed him into the dark. And as the weeks turned into months, maintaining that lie was going to become the most dangerous and emotionally devastating game Vivian Kensington had ever played. The transformation of Nathaniel Reed was nothing short of miraculous. Within 48 hours of clutching that gold-embossed business card, he was sitting in a sleek, glass-walled conference room in Bellevue, across from Alexander Hayes. Alexander was a seasoned corporate proxy, a brilliant actor hired by Vivian to play the role of the benevolent venture capitalist. He played his part flawlessly, offering Nathaniel a $50 million seed investment with 0 predatory clauses. It was the lifeline of a century. Over the next 6 months, the ghost who had haunted the Starlight Diner evaporated. In his place stood the Titan reborn. Nathaniel launched NovaGrid Solutions, leasing a modest but functional warehouse space in the industrial district. He worked 20-hour days, fueled by a relentless, burning desire to secure his daughter's future. His revolutionary residential solar grid wasn't just a prototype anymore. It was being mass-produced, disrupting the Seattle energy sector with terrifying speed. Yet despite his skyrocketing success and grueling schedule, Nathaniel never missed a Tuesday night at the Starlight Diner. For Vivian Kensington, these Tuesday nights became the absolute center of her universe, a perilous oasis in her cutthroat life. At 2 a.m., she would shed her custom Tom Ford suits, pin on her crooked Vivi name tag, and wait for the chime of the door. One particular Tuesday in late March, Nathaniel walked in, his face glowing with a triumphant, exhausted smile. He didn't slide into booth number 4. Instead, he sat directly at the counter, right in front of her. "Vivi," he said, his deep voice carrying a warmth that made Vivian's chest tighten. "I have something to tell you." "Did you finally sleep for more than 4 hours?" Vivian teased, wiping down the laminated counter with her rag. "Better," Nathaniel beamed. He reached across the counter and gently took her hand. His touch sent a shock wave through her system. Novagrid just secured the municipal contract for the entire city of Tacoma. "We're going national, Vivi. But more importantly, I took Madeline to Seattle Children's Hospital this morning. The new specialists. They think they can manage her asthma permanently with a new immunotherapy trial. I can afford the absolute best care for her now." Vivian swallowed hard, fighting the tears burning the back of her eyes. She knew all about the trial at Seattle Children's. She had anonymously funded the entire research program 2 months prior, ensuring Madeline was at the top of the list. "Nathaniel, that is incredible news," Vivian whispered, her voice trembling genuinely. "I am so happy for you." Nathaniel's piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, stripping away the fluorescent diner lights and the lingering smell of stale grease. "I want to take you out, Vivi. A real date. You were the only person who looked at a broken, bankrupt drunk and treated him like a human being. You gave me that business card. You saved me. Let me treat you to dinner at Canlis tomorrow night." Panic flared in Vivian's chest. Canlis was Seattle's most exclusive restaurant. It was where her peers, tech billionaires, hedge fund managers, and politicians dined. If she walked in there with Nathaniel, her cover would be blown in seconds. The waitress named Vivi would die, and Vivian Kensington, the monster who destroyed his first company, would be resurrected. "Nathaniel, I don't have anything to wear to a place like that," Vivian stammered, pulling her hand away gently. "I'm just a diner waitress. I wouldn't fit in." "You fit in perfectly wherever you are," Nathaniel replied softly, a fierce determination in his eyes. "But if you want something quieter, I'll cook for you. My apartment. Tomorrow at 8. Vivian had no escape. She nodded, terrified and elated all at once. But while Vivian was playing house in the shadows, the wolves in her own empire were circling. Harrison Cole, her executive vice president, had grown highly suspicious of Vivian's erratic schedule and the mysterious $50 million deficit channeled through a shell company named Apex Vanguard. Harrison was a shark who survived on leverage, and he had quietly hired an elite corporate spy named Mitchell to trail his CEO. The next morning, Harrison sat in his penthouse office, sifting through a manila folder filled with glossy surveillance photos. There was Vivian Kensington, worth $4 billion, wearing a cheap polyester uniform, serving coffee. And there she was again, standing outside the Starlight Diner, laughing intimately with Nathaniel Reed, the very man Harrison had illegally driven into bankruptcy. A cruel, razor-sharp smile spread across Harrison's face. The leverage he needed to stage a boardroom coup and strip Vivian of her CEO title had just fallen right into his lap. The air in Nathaniel's newly leased luxury apartment in downtown Seattle was thick with the scent of roasted garlic and expensive red wine. Vivian sat on a plush velvet sofa, nursing a glass of Cabernet. She was wearing a simple, unassuming floral dress, trying desperately to suppress her refined, aristocratic mannerisms. Nathaniel was in the kitchen, laughing as he plated their dinner. "I hope you like risotto, Vivi. It's the only fancy thing I know how to make." "I'm sure it's perfect," Vivian said, smiling, but her stomach was in knots. She was falling in love with him. It was a terrifying, all-consuming realization. She loved his resilience, his devotion to his daughter, and the gentle way he looked at her. But the foundation of their entire relationship was built on a ticking time bomb of deception. Before Nathaniel could walk out of the kitchen, a sharp, authoritative knock echoed through the apartment. Nathaniel frowned, setting the plates down on the granite island. "I'm not expecting anyone. Madeline is at her grandmother's tonight. Just a second, Vivi." He walked to the door and pulled it open. Standing in the hallway was Harrison Cole, flanked by two imposing security guards. Harrison was dressed impeccably in a charcoal Brioni suit, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. Nathaniel's blood ran instantly cold. He recognized the man immediately. This was the architect of his ruin. "Harrison Cole," Nathaniel growled, his fists clenching so hard his knuckles turned white. "What the hell are you doing at my home? Get out before I call the police." Now, Nathaniel, is that any way to greet an old business partner?" Harrison purred, stepping smoothly into the foyer despite Nathaniel's threatening posture. "I actually didn't come to see you. I came to retrieve my CEO. She has an emergency board meeting and she seems to have lost track of time playing dress-up." Nathaniel blinked, confusion masking his rage. "What are you talking about? There's nobody here but me and—" "Vivian!" Harrison called out, his voice echoing into the living room. "The charade is over. Come out, darling." Time seemed to fracture and slow down. Nathaniel turned around slowly. Vivian emerged from the living room. The timid, shy posture of the waitress was gone. She stood tall, her spine perfectly straight, her dark eyes flashing with a lethal, terrifying authority. The cheap floral dress suddenly looked entirely out of place on the ruthless titan standing before them. "Harrison," Vivian said, her voice dropping an octave into the icy, commanding tone that made Wall Street executives tremble. "You have crossed a line that you will not survive." Nathaniel stumbled back, hitting the wall. The air was violently sucked from his lungs. He looked at the woman he was falling in love with, and suddenly, the pieces crashed together with sickening clarity. The poise she occasionally slipped into, the impossible, miraculous appearance of the venture capitalist, the sudden funding of the medical trial at Seattle Children's Hospital. "Vivi?" Nathaniel choked out, his voice shattering. Harrison laughed, a dry, venomous sound. "Vivi? Is that what she told you?" "Nathaniel, you brilliant, gullible fool. Allow me to introduce Vivian Kensington, the CEO and sole owner of Kensington Global, the woman who signed the order to gut Reed Innovations, bankrupt you, and steal your patents. She didn't save you, Nathaniel. She bought her own conscience." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathaniel stared at Vivian, his chest heaving. The betrayal in his blue eyes was a physical blow, striking Vivian with the force of a freight train. "Nathaniel, please," Vivian whispered, stepping forward, her flawless composure finally cracking. "Let me explain. When my company acquired yours, I was in a coma from a car accident. I didn't know what Harrison had done to you. I didn't know he fabricated the embezzlement charges. I only found out the night you walked into the diner." "So you lied to me?" Nathaniel roared, the sound tearing from his throat in sheer agony. "For months, you poured my coffee, held my hand, and let me pour my heart out to the very person whose name is on the paperwork that destroyed my family. The Apex Vanguard money. That was you." "I wanted to fix it," Vivian cried, tears finally spilling over her lashes. "I couldn't just hand you a check. You hated Kensington Global. You would have never taken it. I had to give you a way to build your life back with your own brilliance." "You don't get to play God with my life, Vivian," Nathaniel shouted, backing away from her as if she were toxic. "Get out, both of you. Get out of my house right now." Harrison smirked, adjusting his cuffs. Gladly. Come along, Vivian. We have a company to run, and Mr. Reed has a reality check to cash. Vivian didn't move. She turned her tear-streaked face toward Harrison, and the sorrow in her eyes was instantly replaced by a blinding, absolute fury. "You're fired, Harrison," Vivian said, her voice echoing with lethal finality. Harrison froze, his smirk vanishing. "Excuse me? You can't fire me. I have the board in my pocket. I am the majority shareholder. I own 72% of Kensington Global," Vivian snapped, stepping into Harrison's personal space, radiating pure intimidation. "I spent the last 3 months secretly buying out the dissenting board members. I know you hired Mitchell to follow me. I know you've been plotting a coup. And I know exactly how you falsified the SEC documents during the Reed Innovations takeover. My lawyers handed the evidence to the FBI an hour ago. You're not going to a board meeting, Harrison. You're going to federal prison." Harrison's face drained of all color. He opened his mouth to speak, but the sound of sirens wailing in the distance suddenly became very, very clear. Without another word, he turned and fled down the hallway, his security guards chasing after him. Vivian stood in the quiet apartment, the adrenaline slowly draining from her veins, leaving only a hollow, devastating emptiness. She turned back to Nathaniel. He was standing by the kitchen island, staring at her as if she were a stranger. "Nathaniel," Vivian said softly, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a thick legal dossier and placed it gently on the granite counter. "I didn't just come here tonight for dinner. I came to give you this." Nathaniel didn't touch it. "What is it? Another lie?" "It's the absolute truth," Vivian replied, her voice breaking. "It's the legal transfer of every single patent Kensington Global stole from Reed Innovations. I've also drafted the paperwork to merge Kensington's entire energy division into NovaGrid Solutions. You are now the majority owner of a $70 billion infrastructure. I'm stepping down as CEO." Nathaniel stared at the documents, stunned into absolute silence. "I never wanted to hurt you," Vivian whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I just wanted to see you fly again. And you are. You're going to change the world, Nathaniel. Kiss Madeline for me." Vivian turned and walked towards the door, leaving her heart on the floor of the apartment. She reached for the brass handle, fully prepared to walk out into the cold Seattle night and never see the man she loved again. "Vivi, stop." Vivian froze. She slowly turned around. Nathaniel was looking at the dossier, his hand resting on the cover. He slowly looked up, his blue eyes swimming with conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, exhaustion, and underneath it all, an undeniable, magnetic pull. "You're really giving it all back?" he asked, his voice rough. "Your entire energy division? Your position?" "It was never mine to keep," Vivian answered honestly. "It was built on your blood. I'm just balancing the scales." Nathaniel crossed the room slowly. He stopped inches from her, towering over her. The silence stretched, heavy and profound, filled with the ghosts of the past year and the uncertain promise of tomorrow. He looked at the billionaire titan who had humbled herself to scrub counters just to protect him. "I don't care about the energy division," Nathaniel said quietly, reaching out. He gently brushed a stray tear from her cheek, his thumb lingering on her skin. "I care about the woman who sat in a diner at 2 a.m. and listened to a broken man when the rest of the world walked away. Is she still in there?" Vivian leaned into his touch, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. "She never left." "Then we have a lot to talk about," Nathaniel whispered, pulling her into a slow, fiercely protective embrace. "And you're going to need a much better dress for our date at Canlis." What an unbelievable twist of fate. Nathaniel finally reclaimed his stolen empire. But the ultimate prize was finding true love and redemption in the most unexpected place. Will Vivian and Nathaniel's new partnership withstand the tests of time and the cutthroat corporate world? If you loved this gripping story of betrayal, forgiveness, and romance, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories.